Let's talk about the fighting in Ethiopia. The government's launched a military offensive in the north, in a region called Tigray.
The conflict could turn into a civil war.
Thousands of refugees have crossed into Sudan.
The death toll is bound to rise.
At the center of it all is Ethiopia's prime minister, a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
War is the epitome of fail for all involved.
He would know. Abiy used to be a soldier who now has another fight on his hands. So how did the fighting start? And what is this conflict really about? Ethiopia is a huge country with many ethnic groups and political parties. Governing them has, at times, been difficult for the central government in Addis Ababa. There have been a few years of economic growth and relative calm. Now, though, things are starting to heat up. Here's why. Ethiopia is divided into 10 regions. They loosely represent different ethnic groups. Each one has some autonomy, but the center of power is in Ethiopia's capital. Tigray, where most of the fighting has been happening, is in the north. The government there is called the TPLF, and it even has its own regional army.
They have a large number of militias and special forces that have been trained in hundreds of thousands.
The TPLF wasn't just in charge of the Tigray region. It pretty much ran the country for nearly 30 years, even though the Tigrayans are a minority, just 6% of the population. The TPLF was the head of a coalition of regional parties, but many people saw it as autocratic and dysfunctional. They locked up hundreds of journalists and political dissidents. And massive protests eventually brought them down. The chaos allowed Abiy Ahmed, a young leader seen as a visionary, to get elected. He's from the Oromo, Ethiopia's largest ethnic group.
Political prisoners were freed. Opposition parties were allowed to operate. He promised a new era of democratic reforms and an end to years of autocracy.
Abiy even won a Nobel Prize for making peace with Eritrea next door. For as long as the TPLF was in power, Ethiopia was involved in a border standoff with Eritrea. So they didn't appreciate Abiy's new friendship with the Eritrean president.
The Tigrays have got a long history of animosity with not just Isaias Afwerki, the president of Eritrea, but Eritrea as a whole.
So here's Prime Minister Abiy with the Nobel Prize and all these ambitious ideas about how to keep the peace in Ethiopia and modernize the economy. Part of his plan was to disband the old governing coalition and unify the country under a new prosperity party. But some, including the TPLF, saw that as taking power from the regions. They also saw it as a power grab by Abiy. The TPLF pulled out completely, and they're accused of doing all kinds of things to sabotage Abiy's success.
They saw him as undermining the coalition, sidelining it, also moving very hard against the TPLF itself.
Abiy Ahmed removed members of the TPLF from top positions. Many were arrested and prosecuted for corruption and abuse of power. So Abiy Ahmed, who at 44 is Africa's youngest leader, made a lot of enemies really quick. 2 years ago, someone even tried to assassinate him.
Ethiopia has become proud.
So that brings us to what's happening now. Back in March, Abiy's government postponed elections because of the pandemic. But in September, the TPLF held one anyway. That escalated things. The parliament called the vote illegal, the TPLF said it didn't recognize Abiy as a legitimate leader, and TPLF forces attacked a government military base. So Abiy sent in troops, and it all blew up from there. Now this is where we'd show you footage of the war, but we just don't have much. The government has cut Tigray off, the roads, the airport, and the internet. So here's what we're hearing. We know the government is launching airstrikes. The TPLF has launched rocket attacks of its own, even across Tigray's borders. Soldiers on both sides are being killed, civilians too. We're just not sure how many.
It's realistic to be talking about hundreds of fatalities already, but it is not clear.
Thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes. Many are crossing into Sudan.
عندي 7 نفر معي اخوي اولاده مراته هو حي وميت ما بعرف
ولا شفت كده بس جينا لنا الراجل اللي وانا مشان ما بعرف انا كم يوم.
And we're already hearing reports of terrible violence. though we can't independently verify them. Amnesty International is investigating potential war crimes, including hundreds of people reportedly hacked to death. The other worry is that this war could spread and drag in other countries, and it's kind of already happening. The TPLF says its old enemy, Eritrea, has sent troops to help Ethiopian government forces, which Eritrea denies. Whatever's happening, the point is the TPLF sees Eritrea and Abiy Ahmed as being on the same side, which could explain why the TPLF has now turned on its neighbor.
At least 3 rockets have been fired from Ethiopia into Eritrea, potentially widening the conflict.
So what do Ethiopians think of what's going on? Some support the offensive on Tigray. These people, for instance, are donating blood for wounded soldiers. Abiy's supporters feel he had no choice but to act because they say the TPLF undermined him at every turn and stirred up ethnic violence. But other Ethiopians say the prime minister isn't living up to his promises and that instead of pursuing peace, he's chosen war.
አገር ሰላም ሲሆን ነው የውጭ ጦርነት እንስማ ድጋሚ አገር ጦርነት ለኔ በበኩል ያመኛል አላቅ በጣም ያስጠላው ወቅት ነው ያለነው
የትግራይ መንግስትም የፌደራል መንግስትም በውይይት በሰከነ መልኩ ለህዝቡ ባማከለ መልኩ ለህዝቡ
In a lot of ways, this is a battle between the old guard and the new. The TPLF started this fight, but now it's about how it's going to end. Whatever Abiy did to earn his Nobel Peace Prize, he'll be feeling the pressure to do it again. This story is moving fast, and there's a lot happening in Ethiopia, not just in Tigray. We have a lot of reporters in the region covering the story, so make sure to visit aljazeera.com to get the very latest. We'll see you next week.